Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzo, your host, your friend, your coach. Today, I have another back-to-back, very good, very inspiring guest, my new good friend, Nicole. We had a beautiful conversation last week, a week ago. This is part two of our ongoing conversation, and we're gonna continue from where we left off. So, Nicole, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Payman. I'm excited to be here and continue this wonderful conversation that we started. It was good. I really
Absolutely,
enjoyed it.
absolutely. Pleasure of mine. So, we're gonna dive right in. I know you like traveling, but I'd like to take you down a different type of traveling, down memory lane. Go back to when you were growing up. You know, when we're kids, people around us, family, teachers, relatives, friends, neighbors always ask us when we're kids, "Hey, Nicole, what do you want to become when you grow up?" What was your answer to that question as a little girl?
Well, it started off with being I thought because I was an organizer, I'd always organize my room. I thought I would be an interior decorator. And then I quickly realized I am not interested in decorating people's homes. I like to organize, but not necessarily the decorating part and all that. So that was the first thing. The second thing was I was going to be a lawyer and I was going to go to law school and go that whole route, and decided when we started getting, I was knee deep in business. I started getting more and more involved in my parents' business. There just really wasn't time for both of those things. I didn't see, maybe there was, but I didn't see it at the time. And so I passed on that.
Well, welcome to the club. I almost was about to go to law school back in 2007, even went to the Faculty of Law in Ottawa, talked to the dean. They said, yes, send your application, but a book changed my life, the 4-hour work week. I ended up starting my online business to complete this me of my parents. And I'd lost my mind to throw away such a prestigious career in front of me. But I didn't want to be stuck in an office for 80 hours a week. For me, freedom is number one.
Yeah, I later on worked with a group of lawyers and had a great time. I mean, it was one of the best teams I've ever worked on in downtown Toronto. And I was supposed to be like a short term thing. It turned out to be a long term, longer term project. And I was at one point we were at this smaller firm, 16-ish lawyers, and moved to Stikeman Elliott, larger firm. It's what it was at one point back then, at least one of the top Canadian law firms in Canada, business law firms. And so it was a big move, from this smaller firm to the big firm. And when I got there, I was like, oh my gosh, this is very bureaucratic, right? Like, this is not the game that I'm playing, right? Being the entrepreneur. They actually hired me originally for my entrepreneurial skills and the ability to work with clients and whatever. So, but at some point I was like, okay, then I revisited again. I'm either going to go to law school and go all in, get my degree, come back and work with them, or I'm going to be all out. But I'm not going to be in this half in between, tax litigation coordinator. It was, anyway. And so I really explored it. I considered that, hey, you know what, maybe I should go back. I was in my 30s, early 30s. And then I was looking at what people were doing and looking at the long hours. I was in tax,
Oh, yeah.
which is not super exciting, right? So the Canadian Income Tax Act is like this thing. And I'm going, when I'm 85 years old, I don't think I'm going to be wishing I knew more about the tax act.
Mhm.
And I just decided, and yeah, there's lots of other things. I could have done corporate securities and all of that too. But I just was like, I want to make a difference in a different way.
So,
And so I set it aside. It was so much fun working with them. Got the opportunity to be as close as possible and as deep in as possible in terms of the work that I was doing without having a degree. And then it was kind of like, well, I either got to go all in or all out. And sometimes that's like life, right? We got to make those choices and decisions as to what are we going to do? The crossroads, like, am I going to go this direction? Am I going to go that direction? And then just go all in.
that's it. Life happens when you make decisions. The slightest decision can take a different path, and that's how it happens. But before
Yeah.
I end this, I'd like to take you back to when growing up. So, growing up, what was your relationship with school? Did you love school or did you hate school?
School was easy for me. Yeah, it was very easy for me. I can't say I loved it. It was just like, all right, let's do it. Got the good grades. I was into sports. So anything with running, I was running, going out for runs before dinner, before I started school. And like literally even before I was that young. I don't know where I started it, how I got into that pattern. But my friend would come and she had her bicycle and I'd run around the neighborhood and then come back and have dinner. And then so when I went to school, I, just everything, cross country, short distance, long distance, everything in between. I was all about it. And so, yeah, it was just a matter of doing it. So, what was interesting though, is that the older I got, when I got into high school, now I'm getting into business, all of this, I realized and that was also one of the reasons why I didn't want to go to law school, and chose not to go to university at all, was because I was, and maybe this was short-sighted, but this is where I was at the time. I have these teachers and they don't know anything about their subject. They're teaching me about business, but they don't know anything about business. Like I was in intro to business in grade 10 and they're telling me that's impossible. That's not the way it works. And I'm like, well, shoot, you better tell my parents because this is how we run our business. It's like they didn't know. And to be fair to them, to give them, credit, obviously they were assigned a subject and they had to teach it because that's what they had to do. But for me, I'm like, why am I going to learn from teachers about something that, that they've never done? And I want to go into business. And so I remember my economics teacher saying to me, now I would have taken it from English, I would have taken it from any other genre, but my economics teacher said, so he said, what university are you going to go to? I'm like, no, I'm not going. And finally he says to me, he says, like, are you crazy? Like, you're going to waste all your brains? And I said, so you're saying that getting into business, I'm going to waste my brains if I get into business instead of going to university. Now explain that to me, right? So, well, you just further your academics. And I went, and for what purpose? To get a good job and to work up. I was like, yeah, but I don't want to do that. So, yeah. So school is interesting. I loved it in the beginning in the sense of like, I'm happy wherever I am, right? And just do it, get good grades, honors, whatever, and all that. But as I went along, I realized it mattered less and less. And my education, true education, happened outside of the school system in seminars. I was in personal development since I was 7, 8 years old. So reading books, listening to, tapes back then, going to seminars. I went to seminars from the age of 12 onwards. From 16 onwards, like every month I was I was like every week, all about it. And yeah, that's just
amazing. Do you remember your first seminar? Did you attend it?
My first seminar, I do not remember my first seminar. I do remember my parents going down to conferences down in the US, and very late at night, the conferences would go into the wee hours in the morning. And I was probably maybe 10, 11, something like that. And we are like, hey, what are they doing? And so we were peeking in the back door, kind of, we shouldn't have been wandering around. But anyway, we're wandering around and peeking in the back door and listening to these entrepreneurs speak about their experience and motivating and inspiring the audience, to keep going, to keep moving forward, to learn, to grow, to be the best version of themselves. And so I don't remember specifically who was speaking, but yeah, I just remember that energy and the inspiration that was in the room, the electric vibe that was in the room of everybody just really, having a lot of hope and belief in their future. So, yeah.
One thing I can relate to that in a way, because growing up as a teenager in the 90s, one thing I loved doing, I've always been an entrepreneur as well. I loved watching those infomercial late at night, especially about doing business. Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Watching those as well?
Well, I wasn't too much into TV because by that time I was already, but yeah, Tony Robbins was on TV, all these guys,
Alton Sheets,
with their
Don
program.
Dupree, do you remember those?
Yeah.
Those guys.
Yeah. Selling their stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how we used to have to get all that
I
information. We'd have to
know.
buy seminars, buy tape sets. I remember getting, was it Unleash the Power Within or Unlimited Power, I think it was called. And, you get the big tape set, 30 tapes and so
Oh my
forth.
God.
And, and now, like, it's all free podcast, go online. There's so much information out there, which is great and also can be a challenge because now you're all over the place and you can very easily get sucked into just listening and reading and not actually doing anything with it. But that's why I always say in our podcast, I always say leaders of transformation take action. So take action on something you learned today. But yeah, good
You men-
times.
yeah, you mentioned those tapes. I remember the first set I bought were actually Tony Robbins's. I forgot the name, but it is like a package with 10 or 12 cassettes and tapes and all that. I actually remember asking my mother that I needed to buy something for school. So I asked her to allow me to use her credit card. And then when this thing arrived in the mail, I said, "What the hell is this? Not for school? What did you buy?" Send it back. I said, "No, no, I need it. I need it." That was so fun.
That's awesome. Different kind of school, Mom.
Oh, big
Different
time.
kind of
Real
school.
school,
Yeah.
real school.
A real school. Yeah.
Imagine that we were in the same class in grade 10, 11. What kind of girl or student were you back then? Were you the shy one, the quiet type, the cheerleader, the chatterbox, the life of the
De-
class? What were you?
Definitely not the cheerleader. I was, well, in grade 10, I owned my own business already. So I was
Wow.
16 years old when I started my first business. So at that point, we were living about 30 minutes away, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, depending on who's driving. But usually it's a little bit less. But
What
we we were living at a distance to the school, and so that kind of changes the dynamic a little bit in terms of after school activities and whatever. But so we had I kind of this like triangle. So home, school, my dad's garage business, and our office, our warehouse. And so I would do this like I would go to school, do my thing, and then I would go and track or whatever. They didn't actually. That's a whole story in itself. I was always a runner, and then I injured myself. And when we moved into from Scarborough up north, the trainers wouldn't let me join the team. And they're like, no, you're not built like a runner. You're not this, you're not that, and so forth. And but anyway, so I ended up on the discus team, discus and javelin and all that kind of field, I guess. Right.
Mhm.
So anyway, so I would run with the runners and I would practice with them, and then I'd go over the field. So I'd do that, and then I would go to my dad's garage, and my mom worked, and she did all the paperwork for the business, and or I'd go to the warehouse and manage our family business there as well, and then go home. So it was this routine. So I was I would say more shy, quiet. It was when I was 16 that I realized that I needed to talk to people. I mean, I was always very introverted, and my brother and my dad talked nonstop, and so growing up, you couldn't get a word in edgewise. So I just didn't need to. And so then when I'm 16 years old now, I'm gonna start my business. I'm going door to door near my dad's garage business, selling fax machines door to door to the industrial areas. Well, I got to talk to people, so I got to get past the shyness. I got to get past you know I needed to start to build some small talk and rapport with people and so forth, and that's where it really started to shift. My personality wasn't necessarily changing, but is evolving, and I was developing new skills and people skills and so forth. So yeah, very
So,
focused, very determined, teaching some of the guys, because I drove stick, and I was teaching some of the guys how to drive stick on my car. It's just fun, but
wow. So
they're
you were,
terrible drivers.
so you went, you didn't get, so instead of starting a job right away, you started your first business
Yeah.
selling fax machines door to door. So when you
Yeah.
were going door to door, how were these businesses reacting to seeing a 16-year-old girl?
Well, yeah, most of the time I got thrown out, or they're like, "Oh, that's cute. That's that no." And so the challenge then became, how do I get them to take me seriously?
Mm.
And so so a lot of times this is actually, something that comes up a lot. It's like, some people say, oh, they don't give me the opportunity. They don't open doors for me, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I didn't look at it like that. I just looked at it. And of course, that was also the personal development that I already had established, right? And my mindset, changing the way I look at things, is I looked at it and I just took it on me and said, okay, well, how do I get them to take me seriously? What is it about me that that lacks the credibility, right? Is it the way I'm dressing? Is it the way that I'm speaking? Is it the way that I'm showing up? What is it in me? And so that's where we were talking about the quality of my questions. Initially, I was like, what's wrong with me? I don't know why this is not working. And I'm frustrated, And then I shifted and I was like, wait a second. These questions are not constructive. Okay, so what do I need to change about me? In the way that I dress professionally, and not like a 16-year-old. Don't dress like a 16-year-old. I was also tall, so I have that advantage that I already looked older, so they didn't necessarily see me as a 16-year-old, but it was really more about what I said. And it was the resilience and the persistence, as one of my mentors calls me, tenacious, very tenacious, is to continue to run the numbers. And so it's just going into, because I looked at it and it's like, okay, well, so who's buying fax machines? My friends aren't buying fax machines. Their parents aren't buying fax machines. These are brand new in the market. They're $2,500 and, wholesale, they're not buying them. And so who's buying fax machines? Well, small businesses need fax machines. Big businesses need fax machines, but they're not going to let me in the door, and so, because it's just that many more steps. And so it's like, if I go small business, hopefully I can get a manager or I can get an owner that is actually going to be there, maybe the gatekeeper and then that next person. So, and one of the things I learned really early on is, and I say gatekeeper because that's what they're meant to do, right? The reception is meant to prevent people from coming in and wasting time from their bosses and so forth.
Sure.
Is to actually build relationship with them and rapport with them, trust with them, and to learn how to talk to them in such a way. And then later on, as I got on the phone and I would run, I just dial for dollars for like 8 hours a day. As I did that, is to know how to speak to them, right? So rather than saying, hello, is Mr. Smith there? Nobody who's a friend of Mr. Smith, Bill Smith, is going to say Mr. Smith, right? So it's like, hey, is Bill there? Yeah, one more. And they just pop you through. And so I started to learn how to do that. So I got to the point where in my early 20s, my conversion rate was I could take a cold phone book directory and book a meeting every 1 in 3. So for every 3 cold calls I made, wow, I booked an in-person meeting. And so I just run the numbers, thousands of calls like that. And so initially it was fax machines and it moved on to other things. I've sold everything under the sun that way. So, but every time I started with a new product, I needed to think through who's my ideal client, where do they hang out, what's of interest to them, what's a value proposition that I can put forth for them. And it's just running that question over and over and over. So that's helped me a lot in coaching because I've coached people from all walks of like different backgrounds and industries and so forth, is to run that question, that series of questions to really understand who it is that you're marketing to. How can you tailor your message to speak to them, and where do you find them? And actually most people still said no. I mean, most of it, like, it wasn't like I had this overnight success, everything was easy. No, most of it was that people had said no, 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 no. And then I would say to them, hey, if I like them, if they're a nice, sharp person, nice person, whatever, I'd say, hey, business owner, leader, whatever. And I'd say, hey, you know what? Totally understand. This is not for you. If we got past the objection handling, whatever, they still don't want it, fine. And said, but I really enjoyed our conversation. Would it be all right if I stayed in touch? And they go, yeah, sure. So I built a whole database of people that said no. So the next time I'm marketing a different product, right? And I changed products, then I'm like running through my database rather than directories. Now I'm running through my database to see who would be interested in this, and then call them. I go, hey, I know you weren't interested in this, but I got something else that I thought you might be interested in. And then after a while, people started going, yeah, actually, that's kind of interesting. I'll be interested in that. So it was a process.
Absolutely. And also because now you have this pre-established connection, they're not just complete cold strangers. So
Yep.
it's a lot easier to so-called close them because hey, there's this familiarity. This is something that a lot of people seem to miss.
And an important piece in this
Mhm.
is doing what you say. So if they say, hey, you know what, follow up with me in 3 months,
Yeah.
this was pre-email and internet and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I had a box and I had index cards, and for every month, right? And so I would write their information on the card, and said 3 months, I slot it 3 months out. 3 months out, that month comes around, I pick up those cards, index cards, and I call those people. So what happened is that people started to realize, wow, and she says she's going to do something, she's going to do it. Even if it meant, like, on a small scale, I call them up, they're in the middle of something. Hello, now nobody answers the phone. But anyway, but back then it was like, hello, what do you want? Basically. Sounds like you're in the middle of something, right? And so I would say, when's a better time for me to call back? So give me 30 minutes. Okay. I'd call them back in 30 minutes. And they're like, it's just psychologically that it's like, wow, she does what she says. So you start to build trust. And as small as that seems, most people don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are like, okay. And then they don't call them back because they're not in the mood anymore, or they're on to the next thing, or they forgot and they missed out on that opportunity. So do what you say.
Absolutely. That's part of, one thing that I learned, that I heard from Ed Milet, one of the guys that I love listening to this podcast, is the biggest form of what is it? Self-confidence is just keeping up your promises you make to yourself.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Before promising to someone else, keep your promises to yourself. This way,
Oh,
it shows
man.
to others, and others can actually see that and respect you much more. And it's gonna elevate your own self-confidence to the moon.
And to that point, I've had clients, new clients come, and they're like, I struggle with confidence and self-confidence. And that's the first question I ask them, to say, so how good are you at actually honoring your own word? When you say you're going to do something, do you do it? How often? And we talk about that, because without that, you can do affirmations and declarations and pump yourself up and do all that. But deep down inside, you don't trust yourself. You're not confident in your own, commitment to yourself, like you just said. If you're not, none of that's going to matter. Ultimately, that's just all puffing. It's like a balloon. You're blowing up the balloon, and then you want rock solid confidence. Do what you say. Integrity is huge.
Absolutely. Lead by example. That's what a leader is.
That's right.
A friend of mine asked me the other day, what's the difference between a manager and a leader? So that's a great question. A manager is someone that manages and tries to get people to do things based on fear, power, or whatever. But a leader, it's someone that doesn't ask, just does it, shows it, and then leads by example, and people trust him or her, and it's a leader's role, in my opinion, is not just to lead, but to inspire, to empower,
Yeah.
uplift.
That's the thing, is it's inspiring, it's expanding. A manager manages.
Yes.
Real simple. A leader leads and a manager manages. We need both. Okay.
Mhm.
There are places where you just, like, look, manage the systems, make sure that they're operating. But even as a manager, if your title is manager, you can still be a leader. You can manage and lead at the same time. I manage the team that I have, I manage the systems and the operations of what I have, and I can inspire people and to be the best version of them, for the best version of them to show up, to step into all that they're capable of. Yeah, that's a big distinction, because a lot of people are, I'm a leader, and it's like,
No, just
is
be.
anybody following? So,
Are you inspiring yourself? Are you keeping your words to yourself?
yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah, and that's interesting, because keeping your words to yourself, a lot of people, we think about it in terms of what we do, but it's also what we say. So I learned this myself about myself, because I'll be like, oh yeah, you're at a networking event, because later on I went from door to door to phone to networking events. So I'm at networking events. People are like, oh yeah, let's do lunch, let's do coffee. And you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But if I'm not seriously willing to do that and interested to do that with that person, don't say it.
Yes.
Because what you're doing is, you inside, deep down inside, they may not know, but you know that you're BSing yourself. Don't do it. So now I don't say anything that I don't absolutely believe and or are committed to, if I'm not committed. So when somebody says, actually, my husband's really good at this too, because somebody said, hey man, missed you recently. I missed you. And he's like, oh, thanks. I mean, most people are like, oh, I missed you too. He didn't. So
I know.
he's not going to say it. And he's not being rude, but he's like, I need to be in integrity with myself. I'm not going to say anything that is not absolutely true for me, because I'm good. It's like little cuts, little cuts, little cuts. And eventually it's like you go to set goals. You go to set goals. People say, oh, I hate setting goals. I had somebody recently who said, I haven't set goals for 10 years. And she said, I'm just getting back into it. I'm like, okay. The reason why people don't set goals, I've had successful people say, I hate goal setting. I like vision casting. Okay. All right. So there's two separate things going on. But anyway, goal setting is having specific measurable goals, time dated, right? You have a commitment to what you're going to do, when you're going to do it. The problem is the reason why people don't like setting goals is because, and they don't achieve their goals, is because they have been not true to their word so often that psychologically they go, I'm going to set that goal. And inside it's like your subconscious mind goes, you're not going to do that. You're not going to, why are you even bothering? Like, I don't even believe you. Right. And so that's where it starts to break down. And so even if you don't reach your goal, if you're going to set a goal, make sure it's a meaningful goal, a goal that's important to you, that you really want, like something that not just somebody else thinks you should do, but what you are really committed to, or what you're paid to if you're working at a job, right? What you're paid, set that goal and then work at it. Even if you don't reach it, you can still have the confidence of knowing that you put your best into it, right? And obviously, if you're working in a company, and depending on the culture of the company, some company, I was interviewing somebody who used to be his executive at Amazon, and he's like, with Bezos, he's like, there's no excuses. Like, I don't want to hear all of the things. All I want to hear is it's done.
Yeah.
That's what I want to hear, or it's in progress and this is where we're at. No excuses. So if we have that for ourselves, and we stop giving ourselves excuses, we will find ourselves being able to accomplish more, because we burn the boats, right? Like that saying, right? We shut the door of that possibility. And it's like, well, this is the only direction I'm going. So I'm all in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful. Powerful. Wow. Powerful. Awesome. We definitely have to continue that in another time. We'll do part 3 in the next few weeks or so. For someone who wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to connect with you?
The best way to connect to me is through my website, leadersoftransformation.com. Everything's there. The podcast, the coaching, the new faith community that I built, everything's there. Links to all my social media. It's all there.
Beautiful. I'll post that. Listen, Nicole, absolute pleasure talking to you. Love your passion, your story, and all that, and the impact you're having, and your vision as well. And most importantly, your big, big, massive heart. So keep shining your light, keep blessing the world, your presence, your impact. Always remember, keep sharing your gifts, and you yourself, you're a gift, Nicole. So share it. And first of all, embrace it loud and proud, and share it even loud and proud around you and around the world. I salute you, truly with a heart. God bless you, and talk to you very soon, my friend. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Thank
Sure.
you. Appreciate you.
Bye.